headphones on?
Still making an adjustment.
That's what happens whenever we don't see each other for over a month.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
Welcome back to the Project Gen X podcast. I am one of your hosts, Alan Smith, along with...
I'm the other guy, Big Dave.
And on this episode, we're back. It has been a little while since we recorded. I knew that Dave was going out of town,
Yep.
and with everything else, with school being out, both for you because of your work and for me with being a dad,
All that means is that work at school has picked up.
Yeah,
I mean, we're basically renovating 3 buildings on the main campus. We're getting ready to. We've already done the groundbreaking, where we're building basically a brand new campus while the old campus is still functioning at Clarksville.
Fun.
And we're looking at building a new campus in Dixon. So,
oh wow,
yeah,
you guys are really expanding, huh?
Well, I think they were all projects that had been approved before the economy started going in.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Dumper.
in the shitter, yeah. Yeah.
So
I know all about having multiple projects that are ongoing. Yeah. Although one of ours is nearing an end.
So your
finally.
house?
No, that's the one that's. We're getting ready to get back into my old place, but this other project that we've been on, we talked about it before, with Dad going in the hospital and then the aftercare.
Yeah.
That
how's your dad doing?
He's doing really well. But during the course of that, it really slowed things down because all of a sudden,
it's just you and Charlie.
Well, it wasn't even me most of the time, because there for a while because Dad was in the hospital for 11 days.
I didn't realize it was that many days.
So I was in there with him, and then whenever he came home,
yeah,
he was in a wheelchair. He couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
So it was, all right, well, I'm taking care of him, and so there was a lot of me not being there. And of course, now we're doing weekly, we lose one day a week right now because he has doctor's appointments, that he has to go to, every Tuesday. And so it's, that kind of takes up the entire day, but it's getting better. It's getting a lot better. So, I mean, he can walk a little bit now. Like, he's always had the ability to walk. It's just that they told him he had to stay off of it for 2 months. And now they're like, you can get up and move around, but don't be doing it too much. Now, the other day he wanted to get out of the house. I know what it was. I'm like, all right, sure. So we went to Walmart. And then we went to get something to eat. And with Walmart, we thought, hey, no big deal. We'll go over there and we'll get on one of those. He'll get on one of those little ride around things. Well, none of them worked. Or the ones that did work, somebody had already. So I was like, all right. So he wound up just pushing a cart kind of for leverage and that kind of stuff. And then we went and got something to eat afterwards. And he was exhausted by the time we got home.
I bet.
I was like, yeah, you overdid it. You can't just jump back out there after being sedentary for close to 3 months, or about 2.5 months. And it's like, you're going to have to really work back into this a little at a time. And of course, can't tell him anything. So it's
that sounds familiar. Where do I know that
my
story?
My son has been several weeks ago. I forget. I was trying to get him into bed or something, and of course he's just like, "No, I don't want to go to bed. I don't want blah 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 blah." And I was like, "You are stubborn." He's like, "No, I'm not." I'm like, "Yes, you are." And he's like, "No, I'm not." I'm like, "Yes, you are." And you get it. And I was like, "You know where you get it from? You get it from your granddaddy." And he's like, "No, I don't." I'm like, "Where do you get it from?" Then he goes, "I get it from you." And I was like, "And I get it from your granddaddy." So there is.
Yeah, it's funny how that hard-headedness thing is hereditary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we got 3 very strong-willed individuals living in this household, so it's fun to. I am the proverbial Gen Xer at this point of taking care of an aging boomer and also trying to keep a Gen Z from doing something
eating
stupid. Yeah, so it's. It's all good though, so it's kind of one of those things now that Dad, like every once in a while, says, "I'm like, no, you're not doing that." What do you mean I'm not doing that? Well, who says I can't do it? I was like, I do. Well, why do you think that? What you can tell me what to do is like because you can't get out of the house. That's why. You're kind of dependent on me right now. So.
Oh, and by the way, you did this to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So it's.
So how much have you been going? I told you so's.
I've been pretty good about that.
Okay.
As time has gone on, on our previous Rambly episode when I was telling kind of what happened with him not going to the doctor like he's supposed to, that could put him in this situation.
Yeah.
But I reeled on the front end of it. I would not let him forget why he was in this situation.
Yeah.
As time has gone on, I have not done that as much because I think it's kind of set in, especially the fact that the doctors keep telling him, it was like, yeah, you could have lost this foot. You legitimately could have. You were really, really lucky that you're healing as well as you are and everything. I'm like, mm-hmm. So it's every time they said, I just look at him like, mm-hmm. 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 Mm-hmm.
So you're telling him, I told you so.
Oh yeah.
Him,
I don't have to say so. The doctors are saying it for me, So it's.
Oh, that's funny.
It really is. It all comes back, and and on a lighter note, he has several times told me that he appreciates everything that I'm doing, and then also has said, he's like, I really hate that you're in this situation. I'm always like, Dad, you took care of me when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And this is just the circle of life. It comes back around. This is, and so, I mean, it's not like I feel put out or anything. It's just kind of like, no, this is what happened. It's like, with my mom passing about a year and a half ago now, there was, Dad took care of her for, well, the entire time they were together, but it was especially the last year or so when she was really starting to, when her health was really starting to go downhill. He took care of her without he just, okay, this is what we're going to do. And then when she passed, it was really quick. Like it was, when she went into the hospital, her dying wasn't even on the bingo card. It was like, I don't know, she's here because she's having mobility issues and blah 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 blah. And then 3.5 weeks later, she's gone. And it was like, what the hell just happened? So there was no,
that's the way it was with Dad 8 years ago.
Yeah.
It wasn't even a thought in our head. Yeah. And all of a sudden he was gone. Mm-hmm. It's like, what?
Mm-hmm. And that's that, I've heard it. Usually they talk about it with either politics or financials or something like that, where it's like it suddenly and then quickly, and it's kind of the same thing with health. It's or it's slowly then quickly is what it is. It's like slow, boom, and then that's it. It's just like what just happened, and
you just ran somebody off the road because you
probably.
Well, it's as you come into this world in diapers and drooling on yourself, and
you go out doing the same thing. I know.
You've seen the media recently. Mm-hmm. You go out in diapers and drooling on yourself.
Oh, we gotta get political because we can get political.
All I'm saying is,
I know
G7 summit,
dude. No. The worst one. Did you see the Juneteenth celebration?
No.
Oh, dude, it is horrible to watch. Because I forget. I think we're doing something. It might have been at the White House, whatever. So there's all these black leaders that are there. Of course, with Kamala and her husband and that kind of stuff, and they're all standing there. And there's some music playing, and everybody's kind of dancing. And Biden's just standing there, and he's at half cornholio. And I said because his arms aren't all the way up, but they're kind of like out and whatever. And he's just standing there, stone still, looking around like, where am I? What's going on? Blah, blah, blah. And at some point, Kamala, it's funny because her husband is like staring straight past her at him. Like, is Joe getting ready to fall over? Are we getting ready to lose him here? I mean, like, it's just, he's got this look, very concerned look. And then she finally kind of catches on what's going on. And she's like, takes his hand, and he kind of like turns a little bit and looks at her. And she's like trying to like get him to dance. And he's just like, it's horrible to watch. It is horrible to watch.
I really don't care what your political leanings are.
I feel sad.
I feel sorry
so
for him
sad
because
to watch.
We're witnessing the worst case of elder abuse we've ever seen.
Look,
ever.
My grandmother had dementia.
Yeah.
Okay, and I mean she more than likely crossed over into Alzheimer's by the time that she passed, for the last probably 6 months or so.
Yeah.
And watching him a lot of times was like watching her.
Yeah.
Where it was like you have these moments of completely lucid, just know everything, blah blah blah, and then the next thing you know, they're just sitting there staring at a wall.
They're in a different dimension.
Yeah, just what's going on, and may or may not know who you are. That was one of the things with my grandmother. She never forgot me or my dad. I know when I realized how bad it was, let's see, she passed in 2019, so it would have been about 2 years prior to that, because she died at the very end of 2019, right before COVID, all that stuff, which thankfully it happened before because she was in assisted living, and if she'd have been stuck in there without seeing anybody, it would have not been good whatsoever.
But Renee's family kind of had that situation.
Yeah, but we were sitting at Thanksgiving, and it was funny because she was going through all that. She was pretty far into it when me and my son's mom split.
Yeah.
And we never told her because...
Why?
And it was one of those things that, she would ask every once in a while, like, is she working today? And we were always like, yeah, she's working today. And that was just what it was. But I was sitting next to her at Thanksgiving, and my son was sitting on the other side of her because they loved each other. And, she asked me that same thing, I was like, yeah, no, she's working today. She's like, oh, okay. She goes, and this is, I think I've talked about it on here. My son has autism, and he didn't start talking until he was like 4. He hadn't shut up since, but
that's the truth.
I mean, he has not. So it was like he just had he waited till he had something to say, and then he had a lot to say once he started talking. So it
takes after his daddy in that aspect. Also,
I was telling his mom that the other day. I was like, yeah, you remember when everything's were quiet? Like, those were a good 4 years, weren't they? And she said, and it was one of those things that she said something to me. She was like, doesn't she have a kid or have a son that doesn't talk or something like that? And he was sitting right next to her.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, Grandmama, that's Xander, and she looked at me like, oh, okay. Yeah. And she started doing whatever. And then she was like, so is your wife working today? That was one of those things where she would ask the same things over and over again, and
you get into the loop.
You do, and it's it only happened for a very short amount of time, but there was about a week period where she called me 3 or 4 times a day, and asked me the same questions over and over, and I would always just answer her questions, and and go on with it and that kind of stuff, and then it's like. That was, I can't believe we're talking about all this, but that was kind of one of those with her when she passed. I knew it. I had known it was coming for a long time, so I had a lot of time to process before she was ever gone. So it was when she finally passed. I was already settled with all of it. Yeah. And, I'm not saying it didn't hurt because it did, but it was one of those where it was like, no, I said goodbye to her a long time ago. And, I just kind of, it's really weird because I know I've talked about it on here before. I live in the house that she used to live in. And it was just, it was like, basically it's a big duplex that we live in. My parents built another house onto the one that she owned whenever they moved, that way they could watch her for the last 18 years or so that she was, And so it was kind of one of those things where, like, I on the side of the house that she lived in, that there was this big window, like walking over to my parents' side. Every time I would come in, I would always look in the window, and Grandma was usually sitting watching TV. Yeah. And it's funny because she's been gone, about 4.5 years.
Still look in the window.
I still look in the window every time, and even now I'm like, I live there. Like, this is like, but I'm just like, I still expect sometimes to like just look over and she's going to be sitting there watching TV in the den, that kind of stuff. So it is what it is. This is not where we originally planning on going here. But yeah, people, if you got a problem, go to the doctor. Okay. I've said that before, but I really mean it's like, it is one of those things where
when you turned on the mic, you just said it was going to be a rambling episode.
Don't put off going to the doctor, because this is, and we've all been guilty of it. I've done it, and luckily I've never wound up in a situation like he had.
This has become a theme the last 3 or 4 just ramble episodes like this. Go to the doctor, go to the doctor, go to the doctor. But
so
we're at that age where
I know
going to the doctor is very important.
That is, being the age that we are now, that kind of stuff is very important. But it's also one of those things where it's like I had to resign myself somewhere in my early 40s that I just can't do the same stuff that I used to be able to. I mean, I just can't. And that's all well and good. Now, that doesn't mean that I use it.
Nor should you.
Yeah, and it's not like I use that as an excuse, because I still do push myself from time to time. But like my dad, who's, in his early 70s, still believes that he can do the stuff he did when he was 25. And it's like, no, you can't, because you physically cannot do it anymore. I mean, it's just, and getting that, do that stubbornness of trying to convince him of like, look, this is for your own good. This is not me like telling you, no, you can't do that, because it's like, no, you cannot do that. You're going to hurt yourself. We're going to wind up back at the hospital. It's, it's kind of one of those things. And I understand, working, especially in the type of work that we do, for as long as he did, and, just, I don't know, this is just kind of what I do. And then one day being like, no, you can't do that anymore. I guess some of it's probably an ego thing. I know, like, whenever I work out, a lot of times I have to remind myself, you're not 25 anymore. You have to go lighter than what you used to, because you can't just start off with that kind of stuff. So it's
my problem is in my brain, I am not 51.
No, same here. I'm still, not the slightest.
I'm still in my 20s somewhere. Yeah. And so I don't think about it when I'm doing stuff. I just do stuff.
Right.
And then I get up the next morning and I'm like, why does everything hurt?
I know. And that's, I know. I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
It is the strangest thing to, like, wake up in the morning and still feel like you're, 25, whatever, in your 20s or whatever. I mean, hell, I might even feel like I'm still 18 a lot of times, But it's one of those things to, like, still feel that way, to still think in a lot of the same ways, a little more mature than you did at that time, but still have a lot of the same thoughts and ambitions and all that kind of stuff. And then go and look in the mirror and be like, who the hell is that?
Yeah.
And realize, like, oh, yeah, I'm not that age any longer. And it's not anything that anyone else had. I mean, everyone before us has gone through that same thing.
Oh,
it's so, but it is. It's a weird, aging is a weird thing. It just really is, because mentally, I mean, my mind hadn't started going yet. Well, some people will argue that I never really had much going on up there to begin with. But it's like,
finally, you beat me to the punch.
So ignorance is bliss thing, So, but it's still kind of one of those things where, when your body starts not being able to do the things that it used to, you're just like, wow, I've said it a lot of times. One of the things that I've had to really adjust to aging is not having the natural strength I always had. Mm-hmm. That was one of those things. I was always strong. Like, I mean, not like power lifter strong or anything like that, but I will always, I mean, the way I'm built and, I always had a little more muscle mass than.
Yeah, you're a fire plug.
Yeah, I am. I mean, it's just kind of like, my son's the same way, dude. He's like, every once in a while I look at him, I'm like, he is built exactly like me. And I told him, he started this whole thing about, I'm strong, and of course, now he's like wanting to like challenge me and stuff. I'm like, dude, you're not anywhere near me yet. But I keep telling him, I'm like, look, you're 10 now.
Well, the problem is that at this age, it's not about strength. It's about old age and treachery.
But now he's like, I'm strong. I was like, look, dude, in a few years, like when you get a little bit older, I will set you up.
Yeah.
We'll go in here and we'll start working out together and that kind of stuff. And I was like, you're going to be extremely strong. This is,
yeah.
And it's just like, don't worry about it. That's coming. It is coming. Okay. It kind of scares me a little bit because a couple of years ago, out of nowhere, he was like, I was doing a workout on my my heavy bag,
Yeah.
And he came in there. He's like, and of course, he's like, hey, and he's like, I'm like, no, you're throwing those punches wrong. Here, let me show you. So we went through all the stuff and everything, and then a few days later, he comes from school and he goes, I can't fight you yet because you're bigger than me, but one day I'm going to fight you. And I'm like, well, when you think you're ready, you bring it, okay? And he's like, and he just looks at me. He's like, I'm going to fight you.
Once again, this is where that old age and treachery comes in.
I'm like, all right, well, I guess I have a fight looming out there somewhere.
Well, every old man does at some point.
I guess it's, but he's a good kid, so I mean, I know it's not like he's just. I don't know where he got that from. There ain't no telling, But I'm just like, all right, okay, And now he's starting this whole like, I'm strong. I'm like, yeah, you're getting there.
Yep.
You're gonna put on a lot of muscle in the next few years, even without working out, just because it's what happens whenever you start going through puberty.
Yeah.
And it's like you're gonna be a beast because, dude, he's getting tall. I mean, like he's definitely gonna be taller than me, and And especially you start looking at like his grandfather and his uncle on his mom's side, they're both like his grandfather was like 6'4", and his uncle's somewhere close to that. So I'm like, I think he probably got the tall gene from his mom's side, plus the rest of the family on me that that got all the tall gene except for me, and it's so he's probably going to be above 6 foot somewhere and built like me. Yeah. And I'm just like, dude, he's going to be a beast. So, nice. And you're like, okay, with great power comes a great responsibility here, buddy. So it's
take him right into that Spider-Man.
Absolutely. Speaking of which,
yeah, I saw that post.
So I posted it in the Discord the other day. My buddy Michael that was on here for the G.I. Joe.
Oh, yeah.
I've been trying to get him back on here, and he's always busy. But
from
Great Escape.
Yeah, right.
And he's only working, like, he's got a regular job outside the Great Escape. Like, he, like, doing really well, apparently. He only works, like, one day a month over there just to kind of keep his discount and help him out and that kind of stuff. And it's usually on Sundays. So this past Wednesday, I'm in there, and all of a sudden I heard my name. I looked up, and he's behind the counter, and I'm like, what are you doing here? And he's like, oh, Doug, who's the manager of the store, he's like called and said that he's like, here, check this out. And he holds up, and I can't pull the issue number off the top of my head. It's just, I can't remember if it's Amazing Spider-Man or if it's Peter Parker's Spectacular Spider-Man. It's the first appearance of the Punisher.
Oh, wow.
And he's holding it up.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and I was like, dude, where? He's like, somebody brought their collection in. He's like, we got all this stuff. And he was showing me that, and he was showing me all this other stuff. And I was like, holy crap. Like, they had that one, and there was another one. I forget what it was. And he was like, I really want this comic. And I was like, well, are you going to buy it? He's like, well, yeah, but I'm going to have to pay it a little, because they do layaways on like stuff that's really big. Of course, him working there, he's good for it or whatever. It's $2,200.
Wow.
Yeah, that's how much comics have gone up. Okay, so I was looking through, and so Will, one of the other guys that works there, he was putting some stuff up. I'm like, what else? Do you got any like other Spider-Man or X-Men stuff? He's like, yeah, I got a bunch of Spider-Man. So I'm going through and I'm looking, blah 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 blah. I was like, and that issue wasn't in there. The one I'm talking about, it's Amazing Spider-Man 121, which is the death of Gwen Stacy.
Yeah.
Okay, and I was like, oh, and I was like, oh, well, you don't have the death of Gwen Stacy. I'm like, yeah, we do. I'm like, what do you mean? And because Doug was putting some stuff, he's like, no, it's back there in that. So I was like, oh, really? So he pulls it out, and I was like, look at it, $75, which is really cheap, but it's got some flaws. I mean, it's a nice copy, but it's got a few little, whatever.
It's not a perfect copy.
Yeah, but
it's a well-loved copy.
If it was is anywhere near close to what that other one was, it would have been way up there in price. And so I was like, $75 for a comic book. And then I was thinking about, I was like, I had a chance to purchase that issue probably 10, 12 years ago, somewhere around in there, for about half that price. Another loved copy, it wasn't great, but it was good enough, it was like, oh, it's not beat up or anything. It's just, And I didn't, and I regretted that. And so I was like, you know what? These prices are not going down. This is so I was like, all right, I'm going to go ahead and pull the trigger on this. And so I wound up getting one of the issues of comics that I've always wanted. You know, it's like one of those key issues. Yeah. And so it's a nice, it looks nice right there in my comic rack with, my, Amazing Spider-Man 252 and X-Men 137 and, some other, G.I. Joe #1 or 21 as well as G.I. Joe #1 and that kind of stuff where it's like, oh, these are all key issues of stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, all right, well, I guess I'm that guy now that's spending a lot of money on paper.
Well,
but it's been kind of nice because
you've always been more into the collectibles than
I am. And I've had to kind of pull back on some of that stuff and really get down into like, what's the stuff I really want? And it's like, like with my NES collection over there, that has really been okay, there are only certain games that I want to get boxed.
Yeah.
Because these are games that I loved as a kid when I was playing these the first time. And a lot of times I have carts, and so I'm always looking for boxes and manuals and that kind of stuff. And sometimes I just find them all together, and so I just go ahead and buy it, and then I can just get rid of the other cart that I did. Yeah, the cart, or just have it up there as a display, and then I've got the cart to play whenever I play, or whatever. And it's that type of stuff. It's not like I'm out there buying up everything I can find. It's like, there are specific things that I'm looking for. It's kind of the same things with the comics. There are specific things that I'm looking for. And so whenever I run across them for a quote unquote reasonable price, I go ahead and do it. And they're just like, hey, why not? Same thing. Hold on just a second. I will be right back.
He is getting up to go get something that I'm betting he's going to go get records is what I'm betting. Yeah, that's what he's doing. He's evidently bought a bunch of new records, which it must be nice having expendable funds, which I haven't had a whole lot of here recently. Would you? Oh, that is a stack and a half, my friend.
Well, this is month-ish, or maybe a little more.
I was just saying it must be nice to have expendable funds, which I have not had a whole lot of here recently.
Some of the stuff, I'll tell you. All right. Let me say this. I walked into Walmart last week.
Evidently,
sometime.
Your Walmart with music is a lot better than my Walmart.
No. I was at
all Taylor Swift.
Well, here's the thing: not every Walmart's created equal. Okay, I was at the one in Hermitage, I think it was. I walked in there with my son. We were over there for some reason. I forget why we were over there, and we walked in, and I went back to. We were back in the electronics.
Yeah,
and they had this clearance section, and it was all vinyl. I picked up some good stuff, and I there was other stuff that was like, all right, I already have this, or else I would have bought it. Like that type of stuff. And I wound up getting some good stuff, and I'll show you. But matter of fact, we'll go right into that. This was one of them that was on clearance. De La Soul's 3 Feet High and Rising.
You know how long I've been looking for this?
Well, those are new pressings. Those are.
I don't care. They don't make this cassette anymore.
No, but you can get those at Walmart.
We're making a trip.
Okay. I got this one also because it was on. It's just like a Dawkins greatest. I know it's just whatever. But this is the one that got me, especially for the price.
So if you don't know, the first record he handed me is De La Soul, 3 Feet High and Rising.
Yeah,
which was one of my favorite albums.
And then that Dawkins it's just like an exclusive like best of that they did. Then I got this Garth Brooks No Fences.
Okay,
which.
See, I've got the box set on CD.
Yeah, we'll say I didn't. So, but that's it for like the new. Well, I take that back. I also picked this up. Temple of the Dog.
Oh no!
It's a 2018 pressing that they did.
Where'd you get this?
I wound up getting that one off of eBay because I was at a local store and they were selling it for like $80. And I was like, I don't think that's right. And so I went to eBay. I was like, oh look, I can get a brand new one for like 25, 30, 25, 30 or something like that. I'm like, okay, I'll go ahead and do that.
And here's the thing: the only song they ever played off of this thing,
Hunger Strike, which is the worst song on there, and that one and Say Hello to Heaven. They played both of those,
and those were like the worst two songs on.
Say
the
Hello
album.
to Heaven's all right, but Hunger Strike is the worst song on that album. But the rest of that album is just stellar.
Yeah.
So here's other stuff that I found. I'm gonna start with this and see if you recognize it. This is the soundtrack for Chess.
This has got One Night in Bangkok.
One Night in Bangkok, Murray Head. Yes,
nice.
That's what that is on. That is off of. Now that was what's the guy's name? Tim
Rice.
Tim Rice was one of the composers on that. But yeah, that's got One Night in Bangkok. I love that song.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I went ahead and picked up the soundtrack. I haven't had a chance to listen to all of it yet. So
nice.
Here's one Dave will appreciate. X, Ain't Love Grand.
Oh, nice. Oh, that's awesome.
Here's one for my own personal, because I was like, I'm going to go ahead and pick it up. Samantha Fox, Touch Me.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can see.
Yeah. I actually do like her. That song, that first album, it was actually pretty decent. I had it when I was a kid on cassette.
I've got Los Angeles.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it may or may not be a first pressing.
Yeah.
It might be a second pressing.
Yeah, I couldn't pass on that X, because I had passed on one of those a few years ago, and I wished I'd just gone ahead and picked it up. And then, of course, for me, I found a copy of the Ramones' Pleasant Dreams.
I've got this one,
which was nice. I'm building up my Ramones collection even more now.
This is actually a better copy than mine.
Yeah, I was really surprised with how good a shape that's in. Even the vinyl's in pretty good shape. So,
yeah.
Of course, we want the airwaves.
Yeah.
Just like, yeah, fuck yeah. Okay, and then I finally got another copy of Transformers the movie soundtrack on vinyl, and that is their original pressing. It's not a repress, and those things are getting expensive.
Oh yeah.
I happened to catch that one before. I got that one off of eBay also, but I happened to catch it before anybody drove the price up on it.
Gotcha.
Whatever. And there was a buy it now. I went ahead and just paid the $35 for it or whatever. I'm like, no, I'll take it now. I'll take it. Okay.
I don't even bid on stuff. If it's something I want, I just go ahead and do the buy it now.
Now we're getting into the other stuff.
Uh-oh.
No.
Ooh.
This is a 1977 pressing.
That was nasty.
Velvet Underground, Andy Warhol.
Oh. See.
I know, but that has Heroin and Venus and Furs.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of those that if I am not a huge Velvet Underground or Lou Reed fan, like I would like to be able to like them as the way that other people do.
Yeah.
But I just can't quite get there. But
it's a very hit or miss. I have to be in a very certain
absolutely.
mood.
Oh, and I found this one too. I forgot The Church, Starfish.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I love this album actually.
Yeah, it actually is. Even everybody knows Under the Milky Way, but the rest of that album is really good.
Oh
too.
yeah.
And then
like Antenna.
Yeah.
Antenna's a great song.
The creme de la creme, the one that I've been looking for forever that I finally found.
Okay.
Living Colors Vivid.
Nice.
And that is not a reissue. That
really?
Is,
that's an
88 or 89, yeah.
Nice.
So, yeah, that's kind of been the...
You've dropped some serious cash.
I don't even want to talk about how much money's sitting right there in front of you. So
I'm guessing this is probably $275 to $300.
Yeah, that's probably about right, somewhere in there. So you smelling of it?
Well, it smells closer to $300.
You know what was funny is that like the ones that I picked up at Walmart.
Yeah.
The De La Soul, because it's a double album. I think it was selling for like $35 or $40 or something like that. I think I got it for about $25.
That's not bad.
The Dokken I think was about. I think it was normally like $25. It was sub $20. I think it was like $17-$18. But the Garth Brooks really surprised me. I got it for $7.50.
Really?
Yeah, it was marked down all the way like that. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. So those aren't bad, but you start getting into some of these like the Living Color. I paid $45 for that one. I paid $40 for the Andy Warhol. I think I paid about $35-$40 for the Ramones. I mean, it's just kind of, and now the rest of them were
you're basically looking at starting out at $35-$40 for everything anymore.
In a lot of ways, yeah. And it's like, there have been multiple times that I've passed on stuff that was around that I'm like, you know, again, those prices don't seem to be going down. It's kind of like the whole comic book thing now, where I'm like, okay, now it's more of a with vinyl where I look at it and go, is this in good enough shape to qualify for me to pay this much money?
Yeah,
you know, now like the Ramones.
That's in
really good shape. I know
that's in a lot better shape than mine, and you remember how good mine sounded.
Yeah, and so it's one of those of picking that up. Anytime that I run across Ramones stuff that I don't have, I actually give that one a little more of a little more leeway of how it looks, because it's really hard to find a lot, especially the Sire stuff from the 80s. That stuff is really getting hard to find. And one of my holy grails of looking is Brain Drain, which came out in in '89. This one's got Pet Cemetery on it, you know, and the reason why is because, again, it's towards the end of when they were really pressing vinyl. You know, just a few years before they completely, you know, went away from it. And it's one of those things that I have found copies of it, not in the wild. I'm usually looking on eBay for them because they just don't show up in the wild. And I've seen them go for as little as $35, $40. Excuse me, but I've also seen them go for $75, $80.
Yeah.
And depending on the condition that they're in, and I'm like, I'm not quite to the point to where I want to pay $75, $80, although I did pay around that much for their self-titled that I picked up, because those first four albums, the Ramones, Leave Home, Rocket to Russia, which I wound up getting a good copy of that for only like $20, and End of the Century. Was it End of the Century? Yeah, I think it was. All of those are really expensive now. Yeah. Where it's like, especially you get some of them that are actually 70s pressings of them, because they're not around, you know.
It's honestly, if it's something I want, it's cool to have like a first or second pressing, but because I listen to my vinyl,
right,
I'm not overly concerned if I end up with a 180 gram repressing.
There are certain albums I've just kind of like resigned myself to. No, I'm getting the 180 gram because that's the only way I'm going to be able to afford it.
Right. And as long as they haven't like gone in and I wonder what's blooming now.
Apparently, it's been something after something after something after something for a while now.
But you know, as long as they haven't gone in and like super remastered it or something, as long as they've left the original material kind of alone, I'm pretty much okay with it. Like I've got, because it was the only way I could get it, I've got a repressing of that Dead Boys album.
Oh yeah, and you know, and I've seen those. Yeah. I have seen, and I've almost picked them up because I'm like, there ain't no way I'm going to be able to put my hands on one of these. More than likely,
and if you do, it's going to be in a trash condition,
or it's going to be really expensive.
Yeah, and that's actually a really good.
I know,
album,
I know. You know, Cheater Crone lives here in Nashville. You know, so
no, I had no idea.
He's been here for like 25 years or so. Yeah, I saw him play. I remember because the Nashville Scene wrote an article about him back, I guess, 99, 2000, somewhere around in there, like when he had first moved to town. Yeah. And somebody found out he was living here or whatever. Anyways, he had put a band together back in the early 2000s, and they played a few shows around. And I wound up going out to Springwater and seeing them play.
Oh, that's cool.
And they did a couple of Dead Boys tunes, but it was, you know, it was all stuff that they were working on and everything. I was like, it's kind of neat to see, you know, one of these punk pioneers living here in Nashville, you know, and it's
but you know, I've got that 180 gram repressing of the Dead Boys album. A lot of my Misfits are Romanian pressings that were licensed by Plan 9.
Well, you know, it was funny. I have several of those. You know, the Green album, what they call it. You know, it's that best of or whatever, the one that everybody picks up for the Misfits.
Okay,
you know?
Yeah.
I wound up getting, they reissued it recently. It was a Record Store Day exclusive. And I wound up going ahead and just picking that one up because I think you were with me. The only time that I've ever like gotten close to buying one of those that wasn't a reissue, we were at the Great Escape on Charlotte.
Oh, no.
That was when I picked up that other stuff. And I was like, I wonder where that other one, and I saw that little punk kid. Yeah. I don't mean that as he was actual punk. I mean, it was like this little kid that was like probably 22, 23 years old walking around. It's like,
do you even know who that is?
It's like I apparently, yeah. It's like, look, you know, that's more than just a stupid T-shirt you can buy at Hot Topic. Okay, that's.
Well, and what was funny is the way I discovered the Misfits is hanging out with this there was a guy that I used to hang out with in art class because he was the only one I would really get along with in high school. And of course he had this like really slammed VW Bug. He was into hip hop and all that, but he was also into punk rock.
Yeah.
And
a lot of crossover there.
Oh yeah. And he was like, oh, here, you should check this band out. And he flipped me the Misfits Earth AD.
Yeah.
And I listened to it in my car and I was like, dude, this is awesome. And I found a copy of Earth AD on vinyl and picked that one up. So I was kind of excited about that.
I was in high school. Well, first off, so we were on the way back from a football game. And a guy that I had known him, of course, we'd gone to school for years and we were kind of in classes. And, he was a couple of years younger, or he was a year younger than me. Yeah. And it was one of those deals where like we had a lot of mutual friends and we knew each other.
Yeah.
Ethan.
You were familiar.
Ethan Hotchkiss. Oh. That was his last. I couldn't remember his last name.
The guy's name was Scotty. He ended up owning or running a furniture manufacturing company here in Madison off of what's the road that used to run by the old Peterbilt plant?
Anderson Lane.
Anderson Lane. Yeah. He used to live over.
Oh, okay. So it's not that far from here. It's like right over there.
he didn't live over there. He worked over there.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Scotty, if you hear it, hey, what's up, man?
Well, that was the whole Ethan. Like this is 89 or 90. I don't know, somewhere around in there.
Yeah.
And he was, and this is going to lead into the other. We were listening. I think we were listening to, and we were doing that whole thing we used to do, where you had like, you take the phones off the headphones, and like each one of us had one stuck on each. And we were listening. He had this little, he had this carry case of cassettes that had different stuff. We were listening to Faith No More, that The Real Thing album.
Oh, epic!
It's The Real Thing is the album. We were listening to it like, yeah, this is cool, blah, blah. And he's like, you ever heard the Ramones? I was like, I've heard of them. And he's like, oh, and so he started like he had a couple of their cassettes in there. We started listening. I was like, dude, I really like these guys, and that was kind of my first like, I really dig those dudes. I'm gonna have to go check out some of this stuff. But the whole thing with the Misfits was the Garage Days album, because they did Last Caress and Green Hell, and they did them, and like, what is this? Is like, who are these Misfits, and then that was my and then that was also being introduced to the band, because that's when Danzig's first album had come out, and Pastor Dave was like, hey, check out these guys, and it was like Sam Hain and the Misfits and all that kind of stuff, and then of course Danzig, and it was like, oh dude, these guys are pretty awesome, and that was kind of my
that when Danzig came out with that album, and had that single Mother, it's kind of when you saw a resurgence of Misfits,
which was really funny because like that single was, or that album was released in, was it 88? I think it was when the first Danzig album came out. But then it was 94
before the single,
when the single, because they'd put out Thrall Demon Sweat Live. And it had a live version of Mother on there, but they re-released the single, and it took off, and it was like, oh crap! So it took 5 years for that single to become something, and
then he played 328 Performance Hall.
Yeah, I didn't get to see that one, so.
Dude. That was a good show, and
I've heard that it was. He's tiny.
He is tiny.
He's tiny. He's like 5'3".
We were all standing in line, trying to get into the building. Yeah. And all of a sudden, he just comes walking around the corner, shaking hands and talking to people. And I'm like,
he's about 3 feet wide. Oh, he's built. Back then, anywhere he was built like a brick.
He was pure muscle and bone. And gristle.
But yeah, he's only like 5'3".
But nice
5'4".
dude.
Yeah. Man. And I saw them years later. He was playing with Ozzy. It was like the first Ozfest deal. It was that was when. I think Black Acid Devil had come out at that point, when he was kind of getting into his techno metal phase or whatever. But of course, he did all the old stuff as well, so it was kind of cool. But yeah, that's what I've been doing there. I know you went on vacation, didn't you?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The wife and I went up to go meet our new nephew, who her sister, she had him back the end of March. Mm-hmm. And a month later, he ended up having major heart surgery. Mm-hmm. He had what was called a narrowing of the aortic arch, which what I thought the surgery was and what I was told the surgery was way more involved, because I got more detail once we got up there. Mm-hmm. The aortic arch is basically that artery that comes right off the aorta that does that arch. They had to go in and they cut a big chunk of that out and then took the two remaining pieces of artery and fused them back together.
Oh, wow.
Because he was only getting 50% of his blood flow from the chest down.
Wow.
And he is just very energetic and kicking, and he's going to be a fighter because the whole time we were there, he was balling his fist up.
He's like, I'm going to fight you, Dave.
Yeah. He's like, I'm going to fight you, Dave.
One day, Uncle Dave, I'm going to fight you.
I'm going to fight you, Uncle Dave. But yeah, we went up there and hung out with them and went out to eat quite a bit. And they're
as you do whenever you go on vacation.
Yes. And where they're at, they're kind of in the Shenandoah Valley.
Okay.
And they're very close to Shenandoah Valley National Park.
Okay.
And they're very close to
your phone.
Yeah, I know, my phone. We actually went up and they've got a part that's called Skyline Drive, which is basically a road that runs the ridges of the Shenandoah Mountains. And it's in like 3 legs, and they're fairly long legs, and it's only like 35 miles an hour. It's kind of like Natchez Trace.
Oh, okay.
But, it's gorgeous. They had all these overlooks where you pull off and look at the scenery, and I'll show you pictures later. And that was really cool. We went to Natural Chimneys State Park, which is kind of like this rock formation, but they have this huge folk music festival there at that state park every year. That I was looking at some of the guests, and I was like, oh, I've heard of them. Oh, I've heard of them. So
that's cool.
Here's the weird thing. Okay. Everybody knows what I'm talking about when I say Rose Parade. And you've seen some of these big professional floats that they do for some of the big...
For the Rose Bowl.
Well, not just Rose Bowl, but for like big cities like the Philadelphia, throws a big parades every year, and, New York and Disney. And
oh, yeah.
Well, the company who actually does a lot of that and who also does all the decorations for the presidential inauguration celebrations since like Truman have their warehouse/museum in that area.
Oh, cool.
And we got to go over and go through it. And the way they got started is the guy who actually built the company, he and his father were... they used to do back in the 20s and 30s and 50s, these big window dressings for these shopping stores like Macy's, used to be like Gamble's, like what you used to see in the Christmas Story, where they would go and look at the window dressings, how everything's moving and all that. That's how they got started.
Oh, cool.
Doing those things. And Truman saw these guys doing one of these window dressings. It was like, who are you? What's your company? Would you be willing to come over and do all the decorations for my inauguration? And so that's how they got started.
Okay, cool.
So, like, one of the things we got to see, you remember Reagan's second inauguration where they had to do it inside because it was so cold?
It was, yeah.
And they had them sitting in front of this great big huge American flag looking thing. That's in that warehouse.
Oh, cool.
And the two chairs that they were sitting in were from the Oval Office. And the White House gave them those 2 chairs. So the 2 chairs and the table and that whole display is actually in that warehouse. They actually do... Okay, the podium that Obama gave his speech from for the inauguration, all that was at the celebration. I'm not talking about where he did the swearing in.
Right, yeah.
That's actually in that warehouse. Somewhere amongst my sister or my wife's sister or her, they've got a picture of me standing behind it.
Okay, cool.
The rug that... What?
Nothing.
No, go ahead and say it. What?
No, that's an off-air thing.
So this burn was so bad.
I may believe that I'm uncancelable, but that one might be pushing it. So
okay, so like the rug that the president and first lady always, they do their first dance on. They make a new one of those for every president, and the one that Trump and his wife danced on was actually there.
Oh, okay.
And you could walk on it. They would let you walk on it and sit on it. And Renee made me dance with her on it for a little bit. So, but
is it the greatest dance? It's the best dance it ever.
But
I can't do a good Trump, but it's
it was I don't care what your politics is. Getting to actually stand on a piece of history like that is. They had a bunch of the stuff from Spirit of '76.
Oh, nice.
Like the Liberty Bell that you saw going through the parade. That was there. It had the three. It had the drummer and the two pipers.
Right.
Yeah. That was there. We got to see that.
That was, you're talking about when Obama was being like the inauguration.
Yeah.
Like when in 08 or 09, I guess it was early in January 09.
Yeah.
A friend of mine, like I was talking to her and she was like, yeah, my friend is going and want to know if I want to go. I was like, you go.
Yeah.
And she's like, "Well," I was like, "No, you go
because it's a part of history."
Exactly. It's like I don't. It's like whatever. Now she was a supporter also, so I'm like, it's even doubly good for you because you're going to somebody that you actually voted for, and that kind of stuff. But it was just one of those things. It's like no, and she was like, "Well, would you go?" I was like, "I'd go in a heartbeat." Yeah. Like I don't care. Like even if I didn't vote for the guy, I would still go to it if I had a chance because this is not something that everybody gets to see. I mean, it's
because I was in the marching band in high school when Clinton's 92 inauguration happened because Al Gore was his vice president. We were one of the Tennessee bands that got chosen to go. And like I got to perform at the old post office, which was now a mall. I got to perform on the steps of of Congress.
Nice.
We did we got to go to the inauguration. We were on the green. Watching the inauguration, and we were halfway there. We weren't like in the very back. We were like kind of halfway there. And on top of it, they had large LED screens that they'd set up so you could see what was going on.
Right.
It was.
Yeah, I know. It's again, you get to witness history. I mean,
in person, it was really cool.
Exactly. And so that's again, that goes back to what you were saying. It's like all the history, put politics aside. Just
go for the moment.
Go for the moment.
Go for the history.
Exactly. And we would say, I was there. Absolutely. So
now, as a drumline, we had T-shirts made up that had the Capitol building on the front of it. It says, "Welcome to DC, boys," on the front. You turn around, it says, "Please assume the position." It had a picture of all of us with our hands against the wall.
Yeah.
So.
All right. So my since the last time we saw each other has not been quite as historical or scenic as yours was, but I've been busy.
Uh-oh.
So
he just pulled out a notebook with notes.
I had to write everything down because I was like, and matter of fact, this morning before you got here, I was like, oh, I forgot that. So
this is just in the last month?
This is everything that I have done in the last month. And this is all media related.
Okay.
So I'll start with movies, okay? So the new Mad Max Furiosa came out.
Yeah, I'm kind of wanting to see
I went and saw it. But to go see it, I decided I was going to watch all of the Mad Max movies. Because they're all on Max, on HBO Max.
Yeah.
So I wound up watching all of them again, and I realized
Mad Max is on Max.
I had never seen The Road Warrior from beginning to end.
Are you kidding me?
Now I had probably seen it. I had probably seen all of it in bits and pieces.
I mean, that's the beginning of the descent into madness.
Well, and that's so it's like, of course I had seen Mad Max several times.
Yeah.
So I went back and rewatched that, and I watched Road Warrior. Here's the thing. Initially, I watched Mad Max, The Road Warrior, Fury Road, and then I went and saw Furiosa because...
Wait, you're missing one.
Not really. Because I'm sorry. After the fact, I watched Beyond Thunderdome, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I maintain that of the 5 movies that exist, there are 2 really good ones.
Yeah.
There is one that's pretty good. Well, let me rephrase that. There are 2 really good ones.
Name them.
Mad Max and Road Warrior.
Okay.
There is one that is highly enjoyable.
Okay.
Which is Fury Road.
Yeah.
There's one that's passable, which is Furiosa.
Okay.
And then there is one that is 2 mediocre movies jammed into one, and that's Beyond Thunderdome. And I have never had the love for Thunder. There's a reason why I skipped over Thunderdome, because I was like, every time I go back and rewatch this movie, it just makes me mad. Okay. And it really is. It's two movies jammed into one, is what it is. You know, you have the Bartertown movie, and then you have the kids movie, and they try to like. They try to force them together at the end. But the thing that's so weird about that is that the guy, the gyro,
gyrocopter,
the copter, who was in Road Warrior, who knew Max, doesn't even act like he knows him in Beyond Thunderdome, and it's like that doesn't make any sense, I mean, it's just like they act like they don't know each other. For that matter, it's just like I don't understand this. So anyway, that's what. So I watched all those. So basically, I saw Furiosa and then rewatched all the Mad Max movies. Which not a bad way to spend a couple of nights, at all, because none of those movies are over like an hour and 45. I think the longest movie is like an hour. Well, Furiosa is like 2 hours and some change. It really doesn't need to be. The problem with Furiosa is that there's about 45 minutes that doesn't need to be there.
Okay.
I mean, it's just overly long for being overly long. It also kind of cuts its own neck at the end because it is a prequel. And then during the credits, they're showing scenes from Fury Road, and it reminds you like, oh yeah, that's a better movie. It's like, maybe don't point out the fact that there was a better movie that was put out before this.
How many showbiz tokens?
Furiosa. Let's see. We do that out of 5, right?
Yep.
I give it 2.25.
Okay.
2.25. Not quite halfway there, but about 2.25.
Now, I haven't seen it yet, but I have seen an article where somebody was talking about it, saying how they could make another one. And actually bring Mel Gibson back into it.
I have heard. Here's been my favorite take on the Mad Max movies in general.
Yeah.
I forget who it was that said it, but it's like they said I'm waiting for them to make the Mad Max movie where they realize that the apocalypse hasn't actually happened. They're just living in Australia.
Okay, that's a good one. Here's the one that I said is that I thought they do the next one and they bring back the original actress for Furiosa.
Charlize Theron.
Charlize Theron.
I have heard the theory of bringing Mad Max back as the older.
They bring back
bring back Mel Gibson as the older Max,
and the Max that was in Furiosa turns out to be the child, and he just took the name.
Maybe, but they would have to do a lot of revisionist history because he didn't. His only kid was a daughter who was killed in the first one.
Well, yeah.
So,
but you got to remember the child that kind of adopted him.
Yeah. There could be that, or even the again from rewatching this, the little feral kid that was in.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, but that's because he's the one doing the voiceover in Road Warrior. When he's talking about, he's like at the end of it, he talks about going on. I was like, oh, you were that kid. Yeah, I would be fine with something like that. I think they can do that.
You bring back Charlize Theron as Furiosa,
right?
You bring back Tom Hardy as Max, and then all of a sudden, here comes Mel Gibson. The original Road Warrior. I mean,
they could go any number of ways, but the problem is that this movie tanked at the box office, and I doubt they're going to do anything else with it. So
maybe it'll pick up in European markets and movie rentals.
I don't know. So I went to the theater because they had a 30th anniversary showing of The Crow.
I wanted to go to that.
And I wound up going, and it was wonderful to see it on the big screen again. Here's the suck thing.
Yeah. Well,
suck for them. For some reason, because I thought it was a Fathom Events deal, apparently it was just they were showing the movie. It was only $5. It was one of their $5 movies that they do.
Why was I out of town? Well, I know why I was out. I was going to see the nephew.
Yeah, you were out of town when all this.
I would have still liked it.
It was 2 days. It was the 29th and 30th that they were showing it. So they were showing previews beforehand. And right before the movie came on, they showed the preview for The Crow remake.
I have heard that is the biggest piece of garbage.
You know, they moved it. It was supposed to come out this month, and they moved it back to the last part of August, which is never a good sign. And yeah, everything is saying that this is going to be terrible. But that was the whole deal. They ran that preview.
Yeah.
And which I was already not on board with it.
No.
And I had already seen the preview, but then they ran it. It was like, man. And then we sat there and watched The Crow.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, man, that was not smart to run that beforehand. That's just.
Well, when the guy who wrote it, directed, whatever, said that he didn't go back and look at any of the source material whatsoever,
I know.
It was like, oh, well, why bother?
Even Bill Skarsgård has done an interview talking about it where he was like, the script was not the script that I was given originally or something like that. So, I mean, it's just whatever. So
I had hope for it because it was a Skarsgård that was doing it. But then when the writer director was like, well, I'm not watching or reading any of the source material. We're making The Crow, but we're making it my way. And it's like, so you're going to drop a giant turd.
It's just let it go. So, and then one other theater visit I went and saw in a violent nature. It's a horror movie.
You sent me a preview for that.
Yeah, I sent you the.
It looked like it was a Friday the 13th ripoff.
That is a fair assessment, although not fully true.
Okay.
Basically, and everything I'm going to tell you is only in the first 10-15 minutes of the movie.
Okay.
Starts off, these young people in the woods. You know, they've got a cabin that they're staying in for the weekend or whatever.
Yeah.
And they find this burnt down fire tower. Mm-hmm. And there is a locket that's hanging on top of a pole inside of it. And one of the guys takes the locket.
You don't ever touch anything in an abandoned building.
And walks off. You know, they walk off and that's it. Well, after they leave, all of a sudden the pole starts moving and a person comes up out of the ground and starts walking, trying to basically looking, doesn't say anything. And it's a lot of, there is a lot of the killer walking in this from behind. It's almost video game logic in a lot of ways, that third person, you know, from behind watching them go through. Yeah. It's an hour and a half long, something like that. There are big portions of it, and when I say big portion, when you put them all together, there's a big portion of it of just him like walking through the woods with ambient noise and stuff and everything. But it's kind of effective in a lot of ways because you see the determination, because you realize, unlike a Jason, this person is walking long distances to get to where he's going. There's none of this like, oh, he's over here and he's over here, and there are no jump scares in this movie.
Okay.
Although the kills are spectacular. There's a couple of...
Is this an A24 film?
I don't think it is. I think it's Blumhouse, if I'm not mistaken.
Blumhouse is usually a little bit better.
It feels a lot like an A24 movie in the way that it's shot and everything.
Yeah.
But the kills in this thing, there's one in particular that is just like, I cannot believe that just happened type stuff. Okay. And I mean, gruesome. And you get a little bit of backstory of what's going on here told through other people, you know, and that kind of stuff. And again, there's no jump scares. It's one of those things, you see it coming. You see it every time, you see it coming.
That's almost more anxiety.
And it is
building.
Still like shocking when it happens. Okay. So I highly recommend that one. So, okay, that's it with going to the movie theaters.
Okay.
Let's go to television. I've watched a lot of stuff in the last month. Okay.
Oh, okay.
I think when we got together the last time, I talked about Hacks had just come back on HBO. That finished up. I went, oh, dude, it was so good. That show keeps getting better. Like every season, it gets better. Highly recommend that show. It's 3 seasons on HBO Max. I think the longest season is like 10 episodes or something. I think the last 2 have been like 8 or something like that. Yeah. And it's one of those, is like, it gives you everything that you need and everything that you want, and it still leaves you wanting more. You know, one of those situations.
I tried watching it.
I love it, dude. Okay. Because as we're sitting here recording tomorrow,
the
new season of House of the Dragon comes on.
Yeah,
and I went back. I went back and rewatched the first season because it's been a year and a half since it was on. Dude, that show is so good. I cannot wait to see this in this new season. I also, because I just got a hair up my butt, I decided I was going to rewatch Firefly. So I rewatched Firefly and Serenity because you're 14 episodes in a movie. That's it's not that big. Dude, that show is still so good all these years later.
Oh, except the ending.
I'm
still mad.
I know
you're still mad.
And I watched all of X-Men 97.
Really?
Yeah, it was really good. Like, surprisingly good. Like, really surprisingly good. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the cartoon animated series is continuation. Really good. Like, and the thing is as a comic book nerd, as somebody who actually read the comics, they touched on multiple storylines from the X-Men. Like when I was reading them, like in the late 80s and early 90s, I'm like, oh crap, dude, they're actually doing this. And again, it's only like, I think it's like 10 episodes or something like that. So a lot of times
took the original cartoon X-Men that we grew up watching and continued it.
Yes.
And it's written by a bunch of comic book nerds because they went back and actually touched on the storylines that you wanted to see. The guy
that was the showrunner apparently really loved comic books.
Yeah.
And so this was, yes, they did. Now, it's not one for one. Like, they make some changes here and there, but none of it is like egregious whatsoever.
Nice.
Like, it's like, and they also didn't put a bunch of woke crap in it, which is really nice. Which is Disney doing that is just like showing some restraint. Okay. That's amazing.
Since you went there, Renee and I started watching The Acolyte.
Oh, well, no, we'll talk about that later. Okay, we will talk about that later. Okay, we're going to talk about that in a different episode.
Now
okay?
we are also trying to finish up the last episode of The Bad Batch. Or not the last episode, but like the last season.
Okay.
The Bad Batch. But trying to get our schedules together.
I get that. So, also in television, but in a different realm, I watched several documentaries. 2 of them which were really Gen X centric.
Bratz and
I watched Bratz because it just came out a couple days ago.
I've got it check marked for me to watch.
And I watched the story of Lollapalooza. That is on Paramount.
Okay.
And it is 3 episodes, about 45 minutes each. I really enjoyed 2.5 of the episodes.
Okay.
Because once you get into about halfway into the 3rd episode is when they're getting into the modern Lollapalooza.
Oh, where it's just based in Chicago.
Yeah. And I'm like, I don't have any, but the first 2.5 episodes are like, whoa, this is so awesome going back and seeing all this footage from, and they had people like, they talked to Trent Reznor and they talked to Flea and they talked to Lars Ulrich also because when they were on 96, they talked to
was there any footage from the Nashville shows?
I don't know, not that I'm aware of. I mean,
that's a shame. Those are good shows.
and and that kind of stuff. And it was just like, it was really cool. Like it really did take you back. They talked to Ice-T. That was kind of cool, because of the whole body count and being on the first. And
the one that I went to.
Oh, and Vernon Reed was on there, because they were on the first Lollapalooza. And
because the Nashville show that I went to, the last 2 bands that played was Prodigy followed by Tool.
It was Tool followed by Prodigy.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, because I left when Prodigy came on. So
why?
I didn't care about that stuff.
Oh, come on.
And but yeah, they talked about all that stuff, and and it was really kind of cool them talking about how when they added the second stage in '93, the people who wound up on the second stage who went on to be huge and then also play the main stage later, Tool was one of them that started off on I think it was at '93 that they had Tool, Rage Against the Machine, and I forget who there was another big band that went on to be big bands who were just starting to break on the scene in that year, and so they played the second stage and then eventually wound up playing the main stage, in later iterations. Green Day, when they were first coming, that was in '94. They first started, coming. They played the they never played the main stage at Lollapalooza, but they were on the. Who got their start at Lollapalooza?
No.
Had some of her first shows? Lady Gaga.
Really?
Yeah, in Chicago. Like that was like her first. Like she played one year. Like I think it was in like 07 or something like that. 07, like when she first was coming on the scene. Played one of the small stages in Chicago. And then wound up playing the main stage eventually, like, yeah, it's like, and that was the other thing, and of course, Perry Farrell is in all of this.
Oh, yeah, because it was his baby.
And he talks about, it's really kind of interesting to watch because he talks about how it started as this underground thing. This real, like, these are not bands that you're just like, turn on the radio and there it is, to becoming mainstream, to him not being involved in 96 at all, and then bringing in Metallica and people like that, to where it's like, oh no, you've got one of the biggest bands in the world that's playing this thing now. This is not where we started. To coming back for 97, and he was the one that put Prodigy and Tricky and Orbital and some of those bands on them, because it was like, these are the bands that he was really into at the time.
Tricky was supposed to have played Nashville.
He did play Nashville.
Did he?
Yeah.
He
played early.
Which one?
He played early in the day because I was there for it. Yeah.
Did I miss Tricky?
You may have. He played early in the day. Like, sun was still up when he was playing.
Well, I mean, we were there for the whole thing because we saw Damon and something.
The Marley
brothers
was there. James played.
Yeah, James.
Tricky was there.
We might have gone to the second stage.
It may have.
Tricky.
Yeah, but Tricky played. I remember seeing him.
I'm sorry I missed that. I can't
think who else was.
I like
there.
Tricky. I can't believe that I would walk off.
Yeah,
the second
Snoop Dogg
stage.
was on that one. That was kind of cool.
I think we went over to the second stage for Snoop Dogg.
Snoop was awesome. Korn was supposed to be on that.
But Monkey got
viral meningitis. They had to pull off of it. Yeah. So anyway, but it was neat watching him talk about all that stuff, and then trying to resurrect it in the early 2000s. And originally when they brought it back, initially it was a touring just like they had done, but the ticket sales were terrible. And then
that was that year that all tickets
there was it was funny because they tried to revive that. They also tried to revive Lilith Fair, and they had the same problem. And several of those things. And so it was like one of those things where, okay. And then someone came and said a proposal like, why don't we set this up in Chicago? Just have it as we'll have it as a 3-day deal.
Yeah.
And then it just became this huge again,
And now we have Bonnaroo.
And we had Bonnaroo before that. So, and that was the whole thing he talked about. It's like in the meantime, Bonnaroo and Coachella and a few other these festivals had gotten really big.
Red Rocks.
Yeah. And so it was kind of one of those, well, this whole thing has changed in the years that we haven't been around. So why don't we just change with time? And it's this interesting thing of watching Perry Farrell kind of come to terms with over time from the beginning of this. I know we're this whole underground thing, and we're not going to, screw the man and blah 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 blah. To no, why can't we do this? We're still going to be exposing a lot of new acts to people who've never had a chance to see them before, and this and that.
And now finally, Live Nation and Ticketmaster
are being sued.
Sued
by the DOJ. On top of it,
thank goodness.
I know. So Lala, if you had a chance to watch it, it's really good.
Right.
It's well worth it. Okay. Then on HBO, they've put out a couple of docs. One of them you probably don't care anything about, called Fallen Idols, which is about the Carter brothers, like Aaron and
I've seen advertisements for
Carter.
that. Yeah.
It's kind of that whole the Quiet on Set, the Nickelodeon. I think it's made by maybe the same people. It's really interesting, just the family and like I didn't realize that, like, of course, Aaron died last year, 2 years ago, whatever it was, but they also lost 2 other siblings.
Really?
Yeah, because I think they're like a family of 5 or something like that. So it's like 3 of them are gone now. And I know one of them was a drug overdose, and I think the other one might have been also. I mean, it's just like one of those things where you start looking into like how messed up that family was/is. And of course, they got into all the allegations against Nick Carter, for the sexual assault and everything, and actually talked to the women that are in the ongoing lawsuits and everything. And it's pretty.
I'm surprised they were allowed to talk to the guys making the documentary with an ongoing
I don't know
court case.
Yeah, I don't know what the whole thing is, but it was interesting. And but then the other one, and I really enjoyed this one, the Movie Pass Mass Movie Crash documentary. Talking about Movie Pass.
Yeah,
it's called Movie Pass Movie Crash because I had a Movie Pass card.
Yeah,
and loved it for about 8 months until everything started going crazy.
Yeah,
and they really got into the whole. This is where we started. Then these other people came into the business, and they're the ones that absolutely ran this entire thing into the ground. Eventually, they lowered it down to $15 a month, unlimited, or $10 a month unlimited, and blah blah blah. They weren't making any money off of it, and they wouldn't listen to anybody, and they were throwing these big outrageous parties and this and that. And they actually talked to the guys, both the original founders who actually own MoviePass again. They got it back.
Okay.
They bought it at auction after the bankruptcy. And that apparently have been working on some kind of resurgence of it. Not at that level, the way that it was.
That would be great if I enjoyed the theater experience.
Yeah, and there's just not as many movies coming out as there was then. That's
not as many movies worth going to see.
Exactly.
And pay that kind of money
exactly.
for. Plus, I hate the actual in-theater experience now.
I don't
I
so much.
I hate those chairs. I hate them.
I don't so much. Those chairs don't bother me. I actually kind of like them. My biggest thing with going to the movies these days is this going to be a crowded movie?
Yeah.
That will get on the app, on the Regal app, because that's all we have, the Regal Cinemas around here. And I will look, and I will go, I'm in between two theaters, and I will look at which one has the fewest people there. And that's the one I will go to if I decide I want to go to a movie, because I don't want to deal with people.
Opry Mills in Hendersonville?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And so and usually Opry Mills is the one that has the fewest people.
Well, it's because everybody's afraid they'll go out there and get shot.
Well, no, I think it's because you have a higher concentration of people around Indian Lake.
Yeah, you're probably
and so it's kind of, and I was really surprised with The Crow. Okay, it was showing at both of them, but there was a couple dozen people at the Opry Mills showing, as opposed to when I was going to look to buy the tickets at the Indian Lake, because that's actually where I wanted to go see it. The theater was pretty full, which I was happy to see that it was doing well. But I was like, I don't want to go sit in that theater. I would rather go sit in with a lot less people and not have people right up on top of me, type stuff. So that was, I bought those tickets and had a good time.
I will say this, and I've only done this a couple times with the reserved seating. Mm-hmm. If it's a movie I really want to go see and it's at a time that I know it's going to be crowded, I have bought my seat and the two seats next to me to keep people away from me.
Well, that was because The Crow was only a $5 movie.
Yeah.
I bought 2 tickets just as hey, look, it's still cheaper than going to go see a regular, movie.
Yeah.
And I wound up, my friend Tiffany wound up going with me to go see it. But it was one of those, even if she hadn't been able to go or I hadn't found anybody else to go with me, I was like, I'm fine with this, because this way I have a buffer.
Yeah.
if people do sit on either side of me, I can pick whichever one. I've got a buffer here, Yeah. And again, it was only $10. So,
like I said, I've only done it a couple times, and it's because it was a movie I really wanted to see that Renee was like.
Right.
The Halloween Ends.
Yeah.
I had a gift certificate that somebody had given me, so I already had one free seat. Mm-hmm. So I just bought either seat on either side of me, and just nobody can sit next to me. I have the seats I want. Screw you guys.
Yeah, it's too bad it's such a bad movie. So.
I enjoyed it thoroughly. You can screw off.
I have tried to go back and rewatch that movie, and it's like, no, this is not a Halloween movie. I'm sorry. This is.
I'll be honest. I think probably from more of because I've done some work in video and all that. My degree was in production and all that. I will say it's probably more from the production side, because the thing was so beautifully shot. I mean, I think it was more the aesthetic side of it.
I get it.
That made me enjoy it. It's kind of like Pig. Pig is a beautifully shot.
It is a beautifully shot movie. It just makes zero sense.
I enjoyed it. I will say this.
I know you really enjoyed it. We know that John from GXG absolutely loved that movie.
John up. I was like, I hate to admit it, but yeah, John was right on that one.
I because of his recommendation, I watched it, and then when we saw him at SFG, and I was like, "So I watched Pig." He's like, "And what'd you think?" I was like, "It was a movie," and then he kind of got a little. I was like, "No," it was funny because George was like, "See,"
and I was like, "John, you're absolutely right. It's a great movie. It was beautifully shot. I really enjoyed it."
I was like. No, this is no. Okay, so the stuff that I watched.
Brief shout out to the guys over at
GXG.
GXG, yeah.
I highly recommend In a Violent Nature. It's not for everybody. Okay, I'll say that.
Yeah.
There are people who are going to watch it and be like, "What the hell is this?"
Right.
But I really enjoyed it. It's got some really, really just incredible kills in it. Furiosa.
Yeah.
Watch it at home once it hits Max or something like that.
That's what I was planning on. Honestly, that's what I do with all my movies now. Is I wait for them to hit the streaming service.
Like I said, if they had cut about 45 minutes out of that movie, it would have been better.
Yeah.
It's just long, and it feels every minute of that 2 hour 15 or whatever it is. Okay, or two and a half, whatever. All right. Of course, you get a chance to watch The Crow. Watch The Crow. X-Men 97. I could not believe how good it was.
Okay.
I was majorly impressed with that. And I was like, I want to see more of this.
Yeah.
This is okay. We don't know about House of the Dragons yet. I'm hoping that season 2 is as good as season 1, but that first season is so good. Hacks again, I highly think. Into the Docks, Lollapalooza. Check it out, dude. It is such a good, especially if you're, Gen X. Like, of course, I don't think we have anybody that's not Gen X listening to us, but definitely you will enjoy.
We've got some folks that are not Gen X listening to us.
Bratz. Oh, I didn't really talk about Bratz.
I know for a fact that we have some folks that are not Gen X that are listening.
I didn't really talk. Movie Pass, Movie Crash. Yeah. Well worth watching. Fallen Idols. It's dark, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Bratz is a pretty good documentary. Okay, I enjoyed because Andrew McCarthy did this movie, did this documentary, and he tries to talk to other people who were in the Brat Pack, and he doesn't get a couple of them that would have been nice to have had. Now Molly Ringwald is just not talking about any of that stuff anymore. Like she's just, I don't even. She'll talk about individual movies, but she won't talk about Brat Pack at all. So she does not appear in it.
Okay.
And Judd Nelson, he says in the doc that he had talked to him, but they couldn't get their schedules together to be able to. But he talks to Emilio Estevez, Demi Moore, Rob Lowe, Ali Sheedy, and then he talks to. And it was really kind of fun because he talks to Leah Thompson.
Yeah.
And she's like, I wasn't part of the Brat Pack. I was kind of Brat Pack adjacent, type stuff. And he also talks to John Cryer, which at one point he was like, I was not a member of the Brat Pack, just kind of stuff. As well as like he talks to, what's the guy's name? Malcolm Gladwell. He talks to Malcolm Gladwell.
Really?
He actually talks to David Bloom that wrote the article that coined the phrase Brat Pack.
Oh, he confronted him.
They talked, and it's one of those things where it was kind of, and really a lot of it, and he talks to some other people, like talks to, a couple of different, like the guy that directed Pretty in Pink, and a few others, that are in and around, talent agents and, all this kind of stuff. And it's really Andrew McCarthy at 60 trying to come to terms with his past and other people who were also there. Like the big one being Emilio Estevez, because like he has refused to talk about that in the last 40 years, 30, almost 40 years. And so getting that interview was really big of him talking about, and they all express, well, not everybody, but like McCarthy and Estevez especially, really expressed the whole, having that label kind of held them back in Hollywood a little bit, because like, oh, we don't want the brat coming on here, this or that. And it's like, he even says at one part, he's like, yeah, you get labeled, you're in the brat pack, and you're not getting a call from Scorsese or somebody like that, because like, why would I want to work with that person? And it kind of like diminished. Yeah, are they good actors? Well, they're members of Brat Pack, so just kind of stuff. But it was kind of neat to like see everybody that they talk to. They get some big pulls there. With Demi Moore and Rob Lowe and Estevez. And they all seem and it was kind of, because they talked quite a bit about how like, we didn't hang out. There was this big thing, like, it was, we were all big friends. Oh, he also talks to Timothy Hutton at one point.
Oh, okay.
And it was one of those things where he's like, yeah, it's like we didn't really hang out. We would run into each other every once in a while, but we didn't hang out. And then we hadn't seen each other in 30 plus years. A lot of us haven't talked, haven't done anything. And so it was like this, it was kind of neat seeing this reunion of these people that, had worked together at a certain time, and that were all like kind of lumped in this one thing, and the way they all processed it, because they all processed it differently.
I think it all started because they were all together for...
It was St. Elmo's Fire.
Yeah.
That was that movie, because that's Estevez and Rob Lowe and Andrew McCarthy and Leah Thompson's in that movie.
Yeah.
And
they were at like the rap party or something, and somebody took a picture of all.
Yeah, it was something like that. But then they did this article. It was actually started off as an article. This guy was interviewing Emilio Estevez.
Yeah,
and he started talking about all the other people, all these other young actors that that were in St. Elmo's Fire and all this kind of stuff. And that's when he coined this what he called the Brat Pack. And that just blew up, and that got more press than anything else. And that was another thing, because Emilio Estevez is still like angry about that.
Yeah, he should
because he was like, I went in. He's like, I was 20. I think he was like 22 or 23 years old, and he's like, I went in thinking this was going to be a legit, hey, this guy wants to talk to me about, being an actor and all this kind of stuff, and then it all got overshadowed by this whole Brat Pack thing, and it just completely changed. It's like, and I get that.
He should be mad. He should have the opportunity to punch a guy in the mouth.
Yeah, but it's a pretty good documentary. I would like to have seen more. It's only about an hour and a half. It's one of those few where I was like, no, I want more. I want more. Yeah. The music's really great in it, because they do play like all the music, like you get Don't You Forget About Me, and St. Elmo's, Man in Motion, and you get like OMD's If You Leave. It's like all the music from these movies that they were in is like
Did you get Psychedelic Furs, Pretty in Pink?
I think they might have. I don't know, but I think
everybody forgets about Psychedelic Furs when they're done. It's like, come on.
Well, that whole album, I've got that album. That whole album was good. I mean, it's got what's his I think the Smiths are on there too, if I'm not mistaken. So, or no, they were on Breakfast Club. Yeah, it's the Please 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 Let Me Get What I Want is on there. So, but yeah, it's well worth, especially again Gen X. Those were the guys. Those were the older Gen Xers. That were thrown under the bus. Yeah. And so it was like, oh, okay. Yeah.
Well, they kind of took the hit for us, because we saw how they got treated. And we're like, oh.
Well, that was funny when he goes to talk to Timothy Hutton. Because they had done a movie, I forget which movie it was. And he said, he makes the analogy. He's like, if Lou Reed is the godfather of punk, then Timothy Hutton is the godfather of the Brat Pack. It's like, I could see that. So, but yeah, it's well worth watching. Like I said, I think it premiered on the 13th or something like that. So it's only been just a few days ago since we're recording this, and it's well worth watching. So it's not quite as have you seen Jim and Andy? The one with Jim Carrey where he's talking about making of Man on the Moon.
No, I've been wanting to watch that. What's it streaming on? Do you know?
It was on Netflix. I don't know if it still is or not. Like that was I think it was like a Netflix exclusive. I don't know if it's still on there.
Have you seen the interview with Chappelle where he talks about getting to go and be?
Yeah, I have seen that. But that movie is basically an hour and 45 minutes of Jim Carrey having an existential crisis.
Yeah.
Like straight into the camera. Like that is what that movie is. This is an hour and a half of Andrew McCarthy trying to come to terms with his past, but not really having the existential crisis. He's already had the existential crisis. Yeah. Now he's just trying to like wrap it up. So it's kind of one of those. And the thing is like, he's in really good spirits through all of it. There's none of this. He's not angry. He's not, I mean, like you can tell that it affected him.
Yeah.
But it's one of the kind of one. This is somebody who has moved past all of that, who's just trying to get some answers.
Right.
And so rather than with like Jim and Andy, where it's Jim Carrey, like legitimately sitting there looking into a camera for an hour and 45 minutes being like, I don't know who Jim Carrey is. Jim Carrey is this construct of all this stuff, of this construct. And it's just like, who am I? Am I really Jim Carrey, or am I am I all of these characters that I've played, type stuff? And it's just like, okay. But yeah, that's, yeah. So yeah, check out Brat.
And he does it through the cover of
Andy Kaufman. Andy Kaufman. That's but it's more than just that. I mean, it really is Jim Carrey going through his professional life and everything that's come with it, and just being like, I don't know who I am anymore, type stuff. So it's really fascinating to watch, and it's a nice companion piece to this. So that's what I've been doing. So I've been on the couch inside because it's been freaking hot here, and I mean we are finally in the it's summertime in Tennessee, and it's above 90 and the humidity's rising, so it's just like
I think the heat indexes are supposed to be in the
hundreds on tomorrow,
like the 105 range,
somewhere in there. Yeah. So
I've been wanting to get out on the bike.
Oh, dude! But you missed. There were a couple.
Well, no, there were, but
there were a couple of really nice days for that.
But here's what's been going on at work. Mm-hmm. By the time I get home, I am so wore out. Mm-hmm. It would be dangerous for me to get on.
I get that, and believe me, getting on a bike when you're tired is not a good idea.
And that's just one of those things where, knowing my age, of knowing where my boundaries are, going, I really want to do this. It would be a very bad idea for me to do this. Mm-hmm. So I just didn't.
Yeah, I get that. There were a couple of days, like I know I had texted you that one. I was like, you better be out on your bike today because it was just so nice. But you know what I wound up doing that night? I took the top down on my car and just drove around. I was like, I'm just gonna go drive around for a couple hours because it was so nice.
You ever gonna get your bike out?
Yeah, I am. My goal right now, because it's still at my old place, and I mean it's legitimately in storage, and I don't have anywhere to put it if I bring it over here. And there's not a whole lot of like, I'm going to go over there and park my car and go ride for a little while, then come back over here and put it up, and then get back in my car and drive back over here, But as we're finishing up this stuff, it's going to be. So my goal is to have it on the road this fall, like when it starts to cool down, and so I can ride a lot. So I've already determined that. So I'm probably going to forgo a little bit about getting some stuff done to actually get the garage finished.
Okay.
So that I can bring the bike over, so at least it will be here and I can work on it.
And
one thing.
You finally get the mid controls put on it.
So I can get it where it needs to be, so that, and also for the fact of like when I decide I want to ride, I just go right out and don't have to worry about anything, and then come back.
I finally got stuff moved around in my garage enough to where I was able to finally pull the bike into the garage, instead of keeping it under that covered area.
See, that's the whole thing.
Bike cover on it.
I don't want to leave it under the carport, even with the cover on it, because I'm like, still not a great. I mean, where I live is a lot better than where I used to live, but it's still the same town. So it's kind of one of those like, you get some crossover from time to time. So, matter of fact, there was a kid that was just killed over here, over near my old place, the other day in the park.
Really?
Yeah, it was a guy. A couple people started shooting at each other, and if I read the article correctly, he was caught in the crossfire. He was a teenage kid, and it's just. Yeah, so it's...
glad you're in the new place. I'm not still over there.
Yeah, but...
I got tired of
I know.
people shooting at the house while we were recording podcasts.
I know, we had that happen. I got tired of getting shot at while I was out in the yard, because that happened a couple of times. And it was just like, all right, this is ridiculous, And so, yeah, don't get that over here as much. Every once in a while, you still hear something, but it's usually away, except for that one time when I did see somebody come down in this intersection and do a U-turn and pop off 8 shots up in the air as they drove off. So
that sounds like somebody just trying to make sure that the property taxes stay low.
It may be. So but the car that did it, that was in, because I was sitting there watching them out the window.
Yeah,
looked an awful lot like the vehicle that I saw run down my old street one day a few years ago that did the same thing. And I wonder if it might not be the same people, and if it is, I know where they live. So it's
we can go take care of that real quick.
Now, no, you know the apartment complex that was such a problem in my old neighborhood.
Yeah,
that's where they live. So it's like,
okay, so it might take
might not want to go in there. So it's
might take a little longer, a little bit more gasoline.
But yeah, anyway. That's kind of what's been going on. I know we've rambled for an hour and a half now about stuff, but we had a lot to catch up on. And we're going to be back with some new stuff. We're going to kind of veer away from individual movies and stuff for a little while and kind of get back into some of the stuff we used to do with kind of taking a topic and exploring it.
Okay,
and,
it's news to me, folks.
No, we talked about
we'll see
what's
what
coming
happens.
up, and then I've got one that we haven't. We'll discuss it when we go to lunch, and we'll kind of get into it. And so go and check out our Discord if you guys haven't. All of our social media stuff is linked in the the show notes, and we'll be back with a new episode here very shortly. And we're just trying to survive the Tennessee heat right at this point. So
yeah, of course, this is only June.
It's only June. It's going to get worse.
Yeah.
The worst part is still 2 months away. So
well, and the first 2 weeks of September.
Yeah,
seems to.
Although last year wasn't too bad in September, so I don't know. We'll see what happens. It's weird. I don't know. We have strange weather patterns. We always have. So for the Project Gen X podcast, I am Alan Smith.
I'm the other guy, Big Dave.
And we will see you next time.
See ya.